Welcome to the Hope for the Journey podcast, a weekday wellness tips program presented by Dr. Denise Marie, Third Order Carmelite. Dr. Denise is a professionally qualified clinical psychologist, health and wellness professor and coach, counselor, plus medicinal herbs educator. Each Hope for the Journey podcast features a well-being key from Dr. Denise, helping you meet your self-care needs for living well. Listener discretion is advised because this and other Hope for the Journey episodes may contain discussions surrounding behavioral health problems and other actual potentially triggering topics.
Welcome back to Hope for the Journey. I hope things are coming along okay for you today. My name is Dr. Denise, and on today's episode of the podcast, our topic is Growing in Grace, which is a spiritual self-care key for living well. To begin today's podcast content, what is God's grace? I like to look at God's grace as His love energy, the free gift to us of His powerful assistance. Because God is love. That is what radiates from God. When we talk about growing in God's grace, who does God give His grace to? Who am I talking about? Well, I mean me, you, your family, your friends, and other people can grow in God's grace. The grace of God is meant to be flowing through you and through other persons too. You might be wondering, what would be good reasons to seek growth in God's grace? Well, even though God accepts us as we are, we can experience more and more of His amazing divine energy, leading to much beneficial growth inside us. So as far as reasons go to seek growth in God's grace, I have organized the reasons into 4 main categories: psychological reasons, physical reasons, spiritual reasons, and social reasons. So as far as reasons to seek growing in the grace of God, we can begin with psychological reasons. Psychologically, for the improvement of our hearts and minds. God's grace can help us to have insight into things, to persevere in difficult situations, to endure. God's grace can help us face reasonable fears, even face an excessive fear that we might have. God's grace can help us increase our happiness. And what about those physical reasons to grow in God's grace? Well, God's grace can help us with our health, improve our health and wellness, even helping us to get out of bed every morning. God's grace can protect us when we are in danger. And what about the spiritual reasons to pursue a life of increasing grace of God? Well, spiritually, God's grace can help us increase our spiritual taste buds, to take more interest in true spiritual things every year of our lives. God's grace can advance us spiritually speaking, enlightening us, transforming our thinking, our intellect, our wills, give us wisdom. God's grace can help restrain wrongdoing in our lives, restrain sin from having complete dominion or control over our behavior. Going after God's grace is such a help in turning away from wrongdoing in the first place. And yet, if we do stray, God's grace helps us have genuine sorrow for it. God's grace gives us gratitude for the gifts of God, whether ordinary or extraordinary gifts. God's grace blossoms in us desire for truth, desire for justice, even gives us a sense of purpose. God's grace helps develop within us a desire to do what God wills, the will of God, no matter what others are doing. And as far as social reasons to seek growth in God's grace can help us offer compassion to people who have criticized us, and God's grace can help us speak kind words to a stranger. The bottom line of seeking God's grace is that we really need it. We need God's grace to sustain our lives, especially upon recognizing that we do not know it all, we do not have it all, and that God is filled with riches for us to draw from. Yet, of course, God does not only give us treasures from his storehouse of graces. He also gives us Jesus, the Lord of grace. So at this point, some of you may be asking, how can you activate the grace of God in you to stir up his divine love energy, the free gifts of his powerful assistance for living? Well, why not simply ask for this and have faith that God is able to share himself like this with you? And if you're saying that you've already been on the road of accepting God's grace, what about choosing further growth in the grace of God? Are you ready then to make more room in you for God to fill you, speak to you, direct and move you more and more in your life? What ways are there to foster God's life of grace, filling you in a bigger way? Well, different means are certainly not limited to, yet include a list of what I'm about to share with you. So, for example, a means of increasing God's grace in you would be to really devote yourself to prayer, whether it's praying for yourself and or interceding regularly for others. It is important also to be reading quality spiritual things. Also to be engaged in regular devotional Bible reading. What a secret it is to grow in grace, to be reading the Bible in a deeper way. Then, of course, there is the importance of examining oneself. How about spending time to identify within yourself unproductive coping strategies, ungodly responses that need confession. You can also make room in yourself for more grace by cultivating the important ability to forgive others, not just in word alone, but through your own daily actions and interactions with people who have hurt you. Mercy is about showing kindness to those in need, whether or not they deserve it or can pay you back. And then, of course, energize with praise, even when you don't even feel like praising God. Grace is also increased through generous giving. One of the ways of acknowledging who God is in your life is through your offerings of your time, funds, and or talent to godly charitable organizations. And why not make it a practice of extending God's grace to others closer to you, your spouse, your children, your church leaders, your neighbors, even when it's hard, by showing them love, doing your best to prevent conflict, and to serve them well. Plus, how about your accepting help from others when you can use it? That's grace at work, too. Overall, it is quite possible to mature in the grace of God, all toward the goal of deepening your spiritual well-being, resulting in a more flourishing life for you in general. Next up, going forward on our topic of today, I wanted to draw attention to one heroine and one hero of the Christian faith for whom growing in grace has been a central personal characteristic. First, I point to Saint Edith Stein. Saint Edith was a German woman arrested by the Nazis, and she died in the Auschwitz concentration camp on August 9th of the year 1942. Here are some memorable and inspiring things Edith said relevant to today's podcast topic of growing in grace. Quote, "Do not accept anything as the truth if it lacks love, and do not accept anything as love which lacks truth. One without the other becomes a destructive lie." Another quote, "Lay all your cares about the future trustingly in God's hands, and let yourself be guided by the Lord just like a child." Another quote, "I even believe that the deeper someone is drawn to God, the more he has to get beyond himself in this sense, that is, go into the world and carry divine life into it." And a last quote, "I don't know where God is taking me, but I do know he is guiding me." Now, the other person I wanted to call to mind is Blessed Titus Brandsma. He was a Dutch priest and a journalist who opposed the ideology of the Nazis and was martyred by them in Dachau in 1942. Here are some thoughtfully striking things Titus Brandsma said related to our podcast subject of growth in grace. Quote, "So many evolving human beings proud and confident of their progress, are turning their backs on God. It is disturbing that in an age of such remarkable progress in all sorts of fields, we should be faced with denial and belittlement of God. How has the image of God become so eclipsed that so many are not moved by it? Is something required of us to make it shine on the world once more in all its radiance? And dare we hope that study of the God concept will at least alleviate the greatest of all needs? Another quote: all men are our brothers, not excluding even those who hate and attack us. And a last quote: I see God in the works of his hands, and the marks of his love in every visible thing. And it sometimes happens that I am seized by a supreme joy, which is above all other joys. End quote. So both of these saintly people, Saint Edith Stein and Blessed Titus Brandsma, have been well aware that growing in grace is a core spiritual practice for better living. For the next segment of today's podcast, I am featuring a piece of music that addresses the personal inner experience of growing in grace. The song I have for you is entitled God of Every Grace, a song written by Brian Fowler, Matt Papa, Keith Getty, and Matthew Boswell. So I will read a good number of the song lyrics I found online that are nicely relevant to our subject matter of today. Oh, let not this world of sorrows steal my only hope away, for the power of your gospel shines within this jar of clay. In affliction you bring wisdom, that my comforts can displace. How my true and greatest treasure is in you, the God of grace. Now to the God of every grace, who counts my tears, who holds my days, I sing through sorrows, sing with faith. Oh, praise the God of every grace. Weary with the weight I carry, give me wings of faith to rise, for you know each grief that lingers through the watches of the night. Surely you have borne our sufferings at the cross, took up our pain, and you lead us on to glory as we trust you, God of grace. Now, to the God of every grace, who counts my tears, who holds my days, I sing through sorrows, sing with faith. Oh, praise the God of every grace. There's a dawning hope before us that I know is soon to break as I wait upon your mercy, which will swallow every ache. Cries of joy and songs of victory when we enter heaven's gates, all your children home together, all with you, the God of grace. Now to the God of every grace, who counts my tears, who holds my days, I sing through sorrows, sing with faith. Oh, praise the God of every grace. Oh, praise the God of every grace. So as this song shows, growing in grace improves not only one's spiritual wellness, but also one's full well-being. At this time, I would like to speak about some extra possible care for you and your overall wellness by pointing to the following: 3 health foods from the biblical time of Jesus, who is ever ready to help us grow in grace, our spiritual self-care key of today. Yet, please remember to discuss these 3 items with your doctor before inserting them into your dietary health regimen. I talk next about this trio of foods as complementary to body and soul functioning. First, I suggest chickpeas, regular brown chickpeas. They are legumes which contain proteins and are rich in fibers, vitamins, and minerals. Chickpeas increase energy, boost immunity, add strength to your bones, promote eye, heart, and brain health. Then I can point out dates. Dates are a great natural sweetener. You can use dates instead of traditional sugar in things like cakes and even smoothies. Dates are a rich source of vitamin C, B vitamins, potassium, zinc, phosphorus, and even calcium. Plus, there is herring, which you can enjoy in moderation. Herring is a protein, vitamin, and mineral-rich fish that is quite a little powerhouse of benefits for your health. Herring can help to maintain your immune system and keep your eyes, brain, and heart in fine shape and work against inflammation. Only please recall my advice to mention such foods to your doctor to check into their being a match to your particular health circumstances. Otherwise, I am glad to underline chickpeas, dates, and herring as nature's gifts for well-being of both your body and soul. Additionally, for today, I wished to share this brief item with you, a post-it note I have written to recommend choosing to grow in grace. So I hope you will take to heart these words from a friend, actually from the book of Hebrews chapter 4, verse 16. Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. As to what comes next, for today's podcast, I can share a phone app in service of growing in grace. This specific app is called First Five. It was created at Proverbs 31 Ministries. The description of the content for this particular app includes these words, quote, "Spend your first 5 minutes with God. In a world where noise is loud, we need a place to quietly learn God's word so we can apply and share the truth. Know the truth. Live the truth. It changes everything." The First Five app offers daily devotionals aimed to take the first 5 minutes of your day. There are also additional study plans available for you to go deeper. One of the best parts about First Five is hearing about the life change that takes place because of what God did in the lives of our readers. Further, going beyond this First Five app I discovered, you can keep in mind that there are other wellness aids to discover in our Hope for the Journey podcast resource center, located on Instagram at Cause for Hope. And to conclude, to finish out this evening's points of discussion, I wish to tell you how pleased I have been to generate this podcast for you today on our quite valuable topic of growing in grace, to emphasize the importance of this spiritual self-care key for you. And please know that I personally wish you more hope for the journey of greater well-being.
The Hope for the Journey program airs weekday evenings from 7:45 p.m. to 8:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Instagram, and YouTube. Dr. Denise thanks you for listening to her Community Wellness podcast and wishes you to keep in mind that there is cause for hope of more well-being.